this goes. Anyway, look, I have just put a quick presentation on. Basically, I have been doing a little investigative journey into HTML5, so I can't drive the Mac very well, so I've just lost it. There it is. Because I used to make templates for Joomla, and I gave up when all the template engines came in. All the template frameworks, because it just became so unbearably painful to work with them that I just lost interest completely. And then recently my interest has been revamped because I've got a new job where I get to play with templates, and HTML5 and CSS3 for me are a bit more interesting. And I'm also interested in developing responsive templates, developing templates that have a little bit more accessibility in them. So I'm going through
Is that Andrew or Bill?
I have no idea.
You wanted to?
Yes, but I found one. Thank you very much. I didn't realise you were off looking for one, sorry. Where was I?
CSS3.
Yeah, so I became interested in this again. So I've been going through a really steep learning curve, and one of the things that I've discovered on that track is that not very many people are developing HTML5 and CSS3 and responsive templates for Joomla. Because you go out there and try and buy one, you can actually, we'll come to that, but you know, I thought, because of that, I thought, well, that's what I'm going to talk about today. So first of all, what I'd really like to know is, who out here is using HTML5? Any of you guys? Some. And how about CSS3? Also some. Who's using an HTML5 specific Joomla template? One. Is anybody developing one? No. Yeah, okay. And who in this room is targeting mobiles with their sites? Presumably via apps. Yeah.
Gary took the most.
Who in here thinks they should be using HTML5 and CSS3, but they don't really know why? Okay. That's what I thought. So what I've done is, first of all, I did a bit of a trawl around and I had a look at some sites. Some of these are award-winning sites, which is how I came across them. And I had a look at what they were doing with their code. Now, it can be a little bit of a challenge in a browser window this big to do this, but we'll give it a crack. So I'm just going to have a quick look at these first of all. So, you know, you're looking at responsive templates. The first thing that you're going to do is go to this site, yeah? Hey, what happened to the speed in here? The other one's really quick.
HTML5.
It runs like a mouse. No, you shouldn't do that. Okay, so interestingly, in terms of responsive templates, this isn't one, clearly, because it doesn't fit whatsoever on this screen. What you can almost see, but not quite, at this resolution is you can see these images rotating in and out of the screen, and the text fading in and out. Okay. So there's a site here which is explaining how that was achieved. It's basically okay, it's really hard, unfortunately, I'm sorry, to see this resolution because the text is now overwriting what is basically the stage. So this is the stage of the site, and this is one image which is rotating through the stage.
Oh, wow.
And that's how he's designed that iPhone site.
Is it one image or one set of HTML?
It's one image and it's
Like a big
rotating
scroll.
through.
That's nice and accessible.
It's a massive image.
Well, yes. I guess it is. If we then go back to the site, we can kind of see he's done something very slightly different on the live site because the text comes in separately.
So how
But you
That's
can
exactly.
see that it's rotating through. But it has, yes, got just one ginormous image, which is an interesting tactic.
how does that take with load time?
Well, the
Well, you
PNG
can just
is
see it
probably
took hours.
Yeah.
On other machines like at home, it's like that, but here, for some reason, it's taking a while.
I just loaded it
However,
here quite quickly.
yeah, well,
No, I mean,
it should load quickly. On other machines, it has, but
the thing is,
about
you're only loading it once.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
So this, he's not using Flash to do this, for which I love him intensely.
Yes,
I think that's great. So here's another example. Okay. Now this one I find also, if anyone's seen this before, it's one of the awards in the way. Wow, this speed is intensely slow. What's going on? This is one of those newfangled, popular one-page websites where you, in fact, in this instance, scroll down to go through the content. So I'm not sure if it'll start yet because it's still loading. But basically, no, well,
Dex, which Wi-Fi are you connected to?
Which one?
Which Wi-Fi are you connected to? Wireless or WPA?
It's not, I don't know why it's not plugged in actually.
It didn't work when you tried to.
I wasn't wireless when it was breaking down. I just changed to WPA and it's loading very quickly and quite well.
I'm not sure I can be bothered to wrestle with the technology right now, but thanks for it. All right, so he also promised me some viable information. Not seeing it. But essentially what's happening here is you scroll down the screen, you can use the navigation, but what it's got is it's got sets of background images that it's layering over each other, which I really like this effect.
by perspective.
But what it's doing is, I thought this was created in CSS3, but what it's actually doing is it's using JavaScript to reset the background position of the images. And so it has got some nice things in there. It's got some scale transformations. It's got font embeds. They're using HTML5 boilerplate and modernizer, so they're trying to find out what features they can use in CSS3, and then they go, oh, sod it, and use JavaScript instead. And I'm actually finding that with a lot of HTML5 and CSS3 sites at the moment. There's stuff that they might do in CSS3, but instead, a lot of times they're opting out and just doing it in JavaScript, because presumably it's what they're used to. So this one's kind of half and half, I suppose. But I still really love their concept. I really like the way it does that.
If they didn't use JavaScript, how would it be?
Basically, it's pushing things through at different speeds and overlapping them, which is nice. Sorry?
If they didn't use JavaScript, how would it go with just CSS3 cross-browser?
We'll come to that. Here's another award-winning one. This is another one-page site, but it's got kind of a more interesting way of. Oh, whoa! Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, you can see it on the screen there.
Okay, I haven't seen this break in any browser that I've tested it on until today, but today it's broken. What it did have before, that it lacks now, is navigation at the top.
I'm glad someone else's site broke because of that resolution, not just mine, really.
It's interesting in this day and age that we're still wrestling with technology. I had to telephone a man in England this morning to get a browser going, and now on these projectors we're still working at 800 by 600.
Yeah.
It's messing up everything. Unfortunately, I'm not able to demonstrate this because this technology has killed the site. But what it did have before, and you can investigate it on your own machines, is it did have a top menu that came over here.
Can you press compare?
And what happens is
really quite cool,
the content is nested.
Yeah.
Each piece of content is nested inside, and so featuring, if you click
Yeah.
featuring on the menu, this would have come to full size, and then you click the next one, and that would have come to full size within it.
Very cool.
So it's doing a resize. It's basically doing a resize of the content.
Well, we've got it working here.
Yeah, that's really, I haven't seen that before.
What's really
But
interesting
it
as
doesn't
well
work on
is
the iPad.
if you click through to
No,
one
I've
of
got it on
them,
the iPad.
It's like options.
and then
When
you
zoom
zoom out on your browser screen,
Yeah.
you get a really interesting effect.
Yeah. I just think it's kind of a,
Yeah, just.
it's kind of a nice thing. I mean, that's using CSS transformations. It's just doing it with scale.
Yeah.
So it's quite
I was doing that.
Mm.
pure usage.
And we don't do it.
Yeah, no,
It's
you've got to
also,
actually tap the. Sorry.
You know, it's not using JavaScript to do that,
No.
which I like.
I really like that
So
one.
feel free to investigate on your own browser. That probably works a lot better than this one. Okay, here's another site that I came across, and it's doing a really cute thing with boxes. So it's displaying a bunch of boxes on a screen, and depending on your screen size, it will display more across the page, and it reshuffles them. So if you click one and open it to full size, it kind of wraps the rest of the contents around it. Now we can't do that on this resolution because there is no rest of screen to use, but on your screen it will wrap it around it. And I thought, well, that's super nice. See, here's the other ones that are coming underneath now.
Dex,
But
do you mind reading the URL first because you can't see the whole lot in that?
cargocollective.com circle box creative. So I thought, okay, well that's really groovy, and you could do that in CSS3, but what I've discovered is this site was working almost entirely in JavaScript. What they've done is they've done a content replace, they've resized the box, they've done a whole bunch of JavaScript trickery, and it's not using CSS3 at all. And a lot of the examples that I found, in fact, were like that. They just looked as if they were using something tricky, and then in the end it was all just JavaScript. This one should be good. Who here has seen this site before? It's kind of one of the benchmarks that a lot of us are measuring ourselves against. It's a responsive design, which means it should be reorganizing its layout and its font sizing and stuff like that, depending on the browser. So it should work perfectly in this browser. Let's just see. Okay, it's looking good so far. I don't spot an error in there. So basically this is designed to work beautifully at different screen resolutions, right down to an iPhone or a mobile phone. And we can test that in here actually. If you've never seen this tool, mattkersley.com responsive, it shows you what your site or somebody else's site is going to look like at different resolutions. So what this one does is it shows it, I'm just showing the width, I can also show device size, so it tells you what you're testing on, so it's a small phone or an iPhone. And it goes across and does landscape, and it goes bigger and bigger and bigger screen sizes. And it shows you what it would look like, the site would look like at that size. So it's, once again, it's pretty hard to demonstrate on this resolution screen because you can't see any of the sizes. But feel free to try it yourself. So that's a 768. So it basically, when we're using this tool to test the site, we see what it would look like when it's squashed down, what would happen to the layout. We also see where the navigation would end up and whether it's still legible and usable, or whether it's just going to wrap and overlap and all that sort of thing. Now, this particular site is going to work gorgeously at almost any resolution, but most sites, by the time you've got them down to a 320, look like the proverbial. I'm sure you've tried a few on an iPhone, and I'm sure we've all built sites that look like shite on an iPhone. I know I have, and that's what I'm trying to correct now. But what you might also see if people are really working at getting something responsive on a small screen, such as a phone, is it will wrap the navigation in a nice way. It'll change the number of columns, so you get less columns, it'll resize the images, it'll resize the videos. This one here, if you look at this main image, if they put it in without dimensions, and what HTML5 will then do, if you put an image without a width and height in it, in your content, it will squish it down to fit the container. So as long as your container is responsive to the screen size, your image will also be. So
sometimes when you do that though, when as the page loads, particularly if you've got a slightly slower speed load, then the the content opens out once it loads the images and things like that. Has that been resolved in this sort of
I haven't seen that issue.
I'm just saying in the past in HTML, when you would if you didn't put dimensions on an image, your text will load and there'd be no space for the image, and then the image will finally download and then it'll pop out the space and put the image in there.
That's why you make the container responsive, so that
Yeah.
it actually controls, that it acts as the
Yeah.
image's width and height
Okay.
in a sense. Yeah.
Okay, so you put that image in its own container.
And there's some little
Yeah, so
tricks
that's
to
like
actually
this.
scale it correctly within that box as well.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't scale down evenly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so that's like this. I've used basically responsive images in here. So this page would display well on any size of browser. You can see it's almost the only thing that's going to happen today that has squashed itself down to fit in that tiny available window. And if I put it down even further, oh God, if I can drive this thing. Anyway, how do you hold the bottom of the screen?
But the menu's over on the left anyway.
Just try. Every time I try and grab it, it's going. Oh, there we go. So you can see that they're resizing that.
Mm.
In fact, disappointingly, this is an HTML5 and CSS3 presentation slideshow page. And it doesn't work on the university machines at all. So we've all got these presentations and none of them work today, which is why we're not using one of the reasons we're not using those computers. So anyway, so HTML5 then, do we want it? Well, there's a great deal of hype about it. It's been around for really quite a long time now. But I would still question whether we want it. I would still question. How many people here have got an iPhone 4S? Okay. Why have you got it?
My 3S was on its last legs.
That's how you justified it to the other half.
Why have you really got it?
I think Aaron's going to leave me for Siri because she answers all these questions.
Yeah, it's got all these cute new toys on it. It's basically a new gadget. It's got new toys on it, and the reason we're all going to get one in the end is because everyone else is getting one. So basically, it's the new standard. And as much as it may have issues at the moment, and I know people who've got them, they've got a lot of issues. You're still going to get one eventually because it's the new standard. And it's the same with this. I think it's not working all that well in a lot of ways now. The ideas are fantastic. They're not fully realised yet. So in terms of Joomla, it's not an easy technology to embrace yet, I would say. But anyhow, for people who don't already know, I can imagine most of you already know this, but essentially in HTML5 we do get some benefits. For example, we don't have to use Flash anymore. So for iPads and iPhone delivery of video, it's realistic. It's definitely possible.
As far as the use of HTML5 goes, I haven't looked at it at all because I was of the understanding that it's not until the latest Internet Explorer that it even supports HTML5. Is that right?
We'll come to that in a second.
That's why I haven't looked at it at all.
Cross-browser support is the biggest issue.
Yeah. I've just looked at it and thought it wasn't supported. Don't even look at it.
Yeah.
You're wasting your time.
Yes. Well, I've just developed an HTML5 CSS3 responsive template for Joomla.
Yeah.
There's not many of those around,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of work. But maybe 60 to 80% of the work is cross-browser support, and a lot of times you can have problems with that.
Yeah.
But I'll talk about that in a minute a little bit. Essentially, it's a good idea because you will write less code. Your HTML code will be lighter and tighter. And there's some other things. It's got geolocation plugged in, which we haven't had. It's got better semantics and accessibility. Sarah touched on it a little bit this morning. I'm still learning a lot from Sarah about that. But essentially, the tags are much more sensible, and they're telling you a little bit about the content, which, breakthrough. Local storage, we won't need to use cookies anymore, which gives us quite a bit more scope for storing more information that we can then use to manage the user experience, essentially, on the website. And there are some forms improvements. I have found they don't translate very well into Joomla, however. CSS3 for me is quite a lot more fun. Transforms and transitions. It's got a lot of image processing that we used to have to do in other ways. Responsive design, I don't know, call me a nerd, I find it very exciting. Whole new world of fonts. I think some of us are getting slightly tired of the 8 available. Animation and drawing, now possible on the fly. Finally, we get some control over backgrounds, shadows, borders, and rounded corners. I mean, I'm not really sure ever why it's taken us this long. My hunch is that because we've got these new things here, we're going to start seeing things now on every website that's ever developed for the next year. We're going to see something that very shortly is going to look like those embossed buttons look like in the 90s.
Yeah.
Oh, we can put shadows on boxes. Let's have some.
Yes.
We're going to get very bored of that. And no pasty, I'm already bored with it. Everybody's putting in an overlay on top of their images with some sort of 50% of a pasty background on it. And even I started doing it, and I looked at that and I thought, what are you doing? Accessibility, finally hitting our shores, is finally more raising the profile, I think, of accessibility and giving us some tools to make things more accessible, which I don't know about any of you guys, but I haven't really put a lot of accessibility effort into things until now, and I've always been a bit ashamed of that. So, having said all of that, fine, so you just go out and get an HTML5 template for Joomla. Thank you very much. End of story. If anybody else here has already tried that, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because the HTML5 templates you can get for Joomla at the moment, there's only about 2 that are any good. The other one have got an HTML5 badge on it, which basically means the header tag just says HTML. Maybe they've got a couple of semantic elements in there, but otherwise all the technology is still old. And when somebody says HTML5, they don't necessarily mean that all of the benefits of HTML5 are going to be implemented in that template. So maybe it won't be responsive, for example. But I think if you make an HTML5 template now and it doesn't work on an iPhone, then what are you doing it for? Why are you even bothering? Or if it doesn't work with the video tags, then you haven't implemented all of that stuff. You haven't implemented the semantics. And what's to be gained from doing it? So I guess a part of this is I've been trying to get a lot of help in making these templates, and I'm hoping that some other people are going to join in, because I feel a bit like there's not many people at it at the moment. And even if you buy an HTML5 template, you put it in, nothing will change on your site unless it's a really high quality template. Nothing will change. Plus, a lot of the benefits of HTML5 and CSS3 are in your content. So you're going to have to rewrite your content as well and strip out all the crap. So, unfortunately, I didn't find an easy answer here. However, very small writing, isn't it? Oh, well. FontJoy, just go to FontJoy. Probably a lot of you have been playing with the Google fonts. It's certainly a very tempting thing to do. But essentially, now you can use an enormous palette of fonts in your site really, really easily. And it's very, very easy to implement that in Joomla as well. I'll show you in a minute. We'll just bump some new content. Basically, you can just find a font and either link to it or download it and embed it in your site. Assign it in your CSS as you would the normal fonts. And, ooh, it doesn't work in this browser. The browser looking for what version is it?
Hurricane Fox.
Yeah. Which one?
You go to Firefox.
Firefox over the other side. No,
On
under
the other
there.
side, Firefox
Yeah,
perhaps.
about.
It's one of it.
Remind me to thank Andrew for that later. Okay. So we are not going to be able to demonstrate that in that case.
Try it.
Can you do it in Safari?
Safari.
And was that Google font you were using, sorry?
Internet Explorer should work. Oh, it's a Mac.
Open up Safari and just drag the favourite icon into the URL. No, you don't need to copy it.
And sorry, was that Google fonts that you were showing?
Yes.
Is there, like, I started using Font Squirrel. Is there a reason why I prefer, I've kind of moved everything to Font Squirrel because it
No, I like Font
SVG
Squirrel.
and-
I like
yeah.
Font Squirrel as well. The reason I was using Google for this demo is it's easier to demo,
Oh, okay.
frankly. It's easier to include without changing very many files.
Dex, I'd love to know your thoughts on, I've been using font replacement for some time and only recently I've moved to hosted font replacement technology, namely either Google Fonts or Typekit. My fear is, what if they're not there in 12 months? What's your thoughts on that?
Well,
Use Font Squirrel.
Font Squirrel. You can,
Font Squirrel's
you
what-
can
yeah.
equally download fonts from places like Font Squirrel, and as long as you download a different font type that covers all your browser bases. The nice thing about Google is you just have to download a link to one font and it works across your browsers. But with Font Squirrel you need to download several font sets to cover the different proprietary browser application of fonts. But you can do that and then you can embed it back into yours. It's yours.
And it literally creates it for you. Like you're just kind of telling it, it'll create all the extra files and it'll even give you an example of the CSS that you can do so you can use the font page.
And if you want a font that it's not there, you own that file, you can go to Font Squirrel and there's a tool that he creates those little files for you with a font that you already have.
Yeah.
Even if they don't have it. But
Yep.
That's quite...
This sounds a bit like QFont then. I was using QFont for...
No,
it's not like QFont at all. No. Because what that does is it redraws. It redraws your text using this new font that you've specified, whereas downloading a font is just like using Vedana or whatever. By the time you've downloaded it, it's a direct font usage, it's not a redraw.
Yeah. So you don't have any nasty JavaScript
Yeah.
issues, which is what I saw a lot of.
I can't, it's going to be really, really, really hard to do this at this resolution.
Just change the
And on
resolution.
browsers that won't even show you the results. So I don't know if I can complete this. But essentially,
Can you press Command minus? Oh, I think it's Control minus in the Windows.
is that still legible?
Yep.
Okay, so you could equally do this, and I would actually recommend Font Squirrel above Google. Partly because you can download and manage the font yourself. It's got a lot of fonts. And basically, if you do that, you can, well, either way, you can embed it in your style sheet. But for the reasons that you said, I would still prefer Font Squirrel, but Google's easier to demonstrate, so I'm going to do that. So basically, this is the easy way to do it. When you go there, they've got currently 288 font families that you can choose from. And you can choose what kind of font you're looking for. So let's say I'm just looking for a display font. And it's going to display all the ones that it has. It's got 79 display font families. And you can put in, to match some design text you've already got, you can put in your own text. You can put in your own size. And when you find one you like, you can just add it. It's like adding to Lightbox. So when you've chosen a bunch of fonts that you think you quite like, you can review them, and then you'll see them side by side. You can choose whether to show the headline or the paragraph content. You can still tinker around with them in the sizing options that they have. Or you can say, no, I don't really like that one anymore. I don't like that one. Especially if your mouse works. let's say you've chosen a couple of fonts you quite like the look of, and you want to put them into your site. If you click the Use button, it will tell you how to do that. And this is what makes it very easy. It's kind of an entry-level how to change your fonts in your site. It couldn't be any easier than this. And even the nicer thing is, when you've embedded those fonts, it tells you how slow they're going to be. So some of them are quite complex fonts, and it starts going up into the red, and you know, you're putting too much of a liability on yourself putting those fonts in. But essentially, if I do want to, all I need to do is link to that font at Google, and then I can use them normally like you would use anything else in your style sheet. So I can use that in content. I can just put a p tag, style equals that, and it will come up in that font. Unfortunately, not in this browser. Because the this there you can. Oh, there you can. You can in this browser. Eventually, when it gets around to it. So if I should log in for a second. I'll show you. So I did put one in here earlier on. What I've done is I've used the Just Tag plugin so that I can put essentially header tags in my content. So what I've done is I've taken this link here. I will take that link now, and I've put it in here. And then I can take that there. Once I've passed my Mac driving test. And put it in here. That's it, really. I'm really struggling with this resolution module. Okay, so what I've just done is I've just changed that font there of that first paragraph, this paragraph here. And the other thing that I can do is, another feature in HTML5 is I can make the text on a page editable. All I did was put p content editable equals true, and I can make the text editable in my page. So that's basically the markup I've used for that. Just so I show that at the same time. But you can see that putting fonts in is easy. So I think it gives us quite a lot of scope to make quite a lot of mess, frankly.
I'm glad you say that, because
I've chosen some ugly fonts on purpose, don't worry.
of course what we should be doing, Dex, is to put that in our body tag, right? So that we replace all of it.
Well, no, it should be in the style sheet. But
No,
I wanted to do it without editing anything except content, just to demonstrate that that's feasible.
No, what I mean is, I've seen people go overboard with.
Yeah, but it needs to be
With
cursive. It'll make the whole site that.
Comic Sans.
Yeah. Oh, Comic Sans, yeah. Okay, so this is. Can you still see that? Right at the bottom here. Can you read that? Hold on. See this div class at the bottom?
Yes, yeah.
That's that. That's all the HTML that is. The rest of it is CSS. So basically what I've done is I've put text up, I've put 2 shadows on it, because you don't need to stick at one. Why stick at one? I've made rounded corners, but only at the top.
Yep.
And then I've put a lovely green shadow on the bottom. Nothing special.
Oh.
Okay, but wait. Where's my kipper? There it is. That is also CSS.
Wow.
I put everything I could throw at it. I put gradients, color transforms, I put a skew in there, I put rotation in there, I've changed the color of the shadow and the text shadow. And then when I unhover it, it'll just go back. And all of that is still that same tiny piece of HTML there.
Bravo.
The only thing is, behind the scenes, there's a bit of CSS. There it is.
How many pages?
Ooh. So that's the first one, and that's the hover state there.
Okay.
But who's heard of prefix free? Leah Veru. Anyone? Yeah. Okay. Well, there's been some people who've got a bit dischuffed with this proprietary stuff, where when you put, for example, a gradient on something, you need all these different lines to go with the different browsers, because every browser wants to do it in its own special little way.
Actually, because the spec changed, the gradients actually changed spec in the last 4 months. So different browsers have implemented different versions of the spec. Current spec actually closely matches the SVG gradient. Not that I know a lot about it, but that's so.
You
that's
know
why
more than me.
Yeah,
you know
so
a lot more than me. So.
that's why there is why WebKit and MS and that do it differently, because those standards are in transition, and when they get solidified, you'll see them go into into a prefix-free world. Sorry.
Good comment. Very good comment. And it's something I'm only just learning about, so it's good that you chip that in. But also, the whole spec is in such a state of flux that this week the time HTML5 tag disappeared from the spec.
Back in now.
But it came back later in the week because everybody went, well, time is basically an accessibility thing. It tells you what the content is, so it's used for time and date, like publication date of an article. You use a time tag, well, okay, that tells you what the content is. So it's very good semantically and for accessibility. So there was an uproar when they deleted it, and it came back 2 or 3 days later. Anyway, so the spec is changing, so there are all these different ways of specifying the same thing depending on what browser you're talking about. And the bit people who've been basically compensating for this. So HTML5 boilerplate is basically a template from which to start to build an HTML5 template. It's like a framework that's got a lot of coping mechanisms for the vagaries of the browsers and things that work and don't work in different systems. And on top of that, or included in that, is something called Modernizer, which detects which features your browser is capable of implementing and which it isn't on the fly as you're running in the browser. Which is great, because then you can say, well, if my browser can cope with this feature, then use it, and if it can't, then do something else. Like if it's IE6, then do something else, or IE8, do something else. And on top of that, now we've got prefix free, which is a very clever Greek woman called Leah Veru, who has implemented something to get rid of the differences in the browser. So this is the code before, with all the different variations, and this is the code after we've applied prefix free. So you can essentially see now there's only one command for everything. So my grading is reduced to 1 line of CSS, because the prefix free is a JavaScript that compensates for that and detects the browser and adds the prefix on.
And second line for Internet Explorer. And second line for Internet Explorer.
Yeah.
Does it work like Pi? Does it go backward compatibility as well?
I haven't used, I know what Pi is, but I haven't used Pi, and incidentally this fights with Pi. This kind of works back to IE6, so it's pretty good. She's kind of the polyfill queen of backwards compatibility for CSS3 stuff.
Cool.
Via JavaScript. So even though I'm trying to write HTML5 and CSS3 as clean as possible, what you end up, and I've been trying to eliminate, including 25 different JavaScript files on every page like we get in Joomla these days, I'm finding that every time I move, I have to include another JavaScript, another, prefix free, another. So my pages are not more clean now. I find that very disappointing. Anyway, but I do find it quite sexy that I can do that with a couple of lines of HTML5 code. I mean, just a div with text in there, which is going to be the most overused feature ever.
Let's hope the shadows don't.
Okay. I like that text can have two shadows now. That's just awful. Yeah. Okay, so here is also, I found another site. Let's see. No, I can't really. Where is it? Here. I found another site when I was doing my research that had these great little boxes on it. I'll show you. Oh, God. Supersized text. Okay. Oh, it works like shite in here. That's terrible. This is so sexy on a proper browser. Anyway, it had these things in it, and I wanted to find out how they worked. And of course, they're JavaScript. I thought they were CSS3. They're JavaScript. So I thought, right, solid, I'm going to try and do that myself in CSS3. So that's my version.
Nice.
It works better than
That's
this
awesome.
browser.
Bravo.
So it's got an opacity change, the rotation,
Yep.
blah, 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 blah. But still not much HTML5, but it's really quite a lot of CSS. There it goes. Let's picture my boss, by the way.
Just given the border on my CSS, or the border around the...
The border is an image, it's just a background
Yeah.
image. I didn't draw that on the fly, I stole it from the other people. Oops, I never did that. The other, I've got a few more minutes. The other interesting thing, and I wonder how this is going to go, I don't think this will play. I've been messing with HTML5 videos because my employer runs a site which has a lot of video, and I've been trying to eliminate flash from the picture. So I've been playing with HTML5 video, trying to get it working across browsers and platforms in a consistent way. And I also need it to be responsive so that the video grows and shrinks according to your browser size. However, it does not work in old browsers. HTML5 video has to be supported for one thing in your browser, which is detected. It's obviously not supported in here. This is the code that I'm using. In fact, you can do it in pretty much one line of code. I've just put some other things in there. And that's the browser support that you're going to get. There's a conference next week in San Francisco about HTML5 video. The whole conference is about that. And I'm absolutely gratified to see that one of the sessions is entitled something like How the Hell to Make Them Work Across Browsers. Because I've just spent about...
fallback, don't you?
Hey?
You can do fallback inside your source if you put your first source as OGG, and then you try and load it in IE, and the next one is MP4. The browser the spec says that they should fall down to the spec they support.
That's right. So essentially you put three sources.
Correct, they'll render it.
Yeah, you put three sources in here, which is your MP4, your OGV, and your WebM. So that covers most of your browser bases that actually work with HTML5 videos. And then underneath you put something for browsers that can't cope with that. But I've been using JW Player because it's got a lot of other advantages, and if I put that in the fallback, it plays Flash, and every freaking... It just ignores the whole
Right.
HTML5 completely. I have tried about 2 million, I think it's 2 million, permutations of this in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that cover every eventuality I'm trying to cover. And I can always get 90% of the picture, but then I get the last 10% and the first 10% stops working, and then I get that and that bit stops working, and I get it working across 6 browsers and the last one fails. And every permutation works across 90%, but a different 90%. So I've yet to find a really reliable responsive solution that works across all browsers without resorting to JavaScript. You can use fitvid.js, but I'm not giving in. I'm not giving in. And JW Player, which I've always used in the past, has got some really nice features. Can't get out to it, can't I? So, interestingly, Andrew, I love your browser. Can I compliment you on your browser version? That's killed almost all of my demos.
Oh, sorry. Hadn't I updated it?
No.
No, but Dex did.
Where was I?
I hate it because every time I open it, it updates. I only open it every once.
Well, it's been quite an interesting experiment because if you're talking about responsive design, if you can't get it working on 800 by 600, then it's not responsive. So it's been quite educational to see what does and does not work. In fact, I've got to try another one right now.
I'm glad I wasn't here.
I've had adventures. Yeah, it's all right.
And your browser got updated in the meantime.
I tried it on several of your
Don't
browsers.
install Wine yet.
I tried it on several of your browsers, but none of them was any better than the others. I want to find out if this works on here. This is my test bed. No, it doesn't. Well, it does, nearly. Well, the video won't play, I don't think. So what I've been trying to do is go on then. Okay. What I've been trying to do is make this responsive so that these columns drop underneath on a phone, and then I change menu types. Like instead of these, which are all menus, instead of them looking like bullets, I've made them into drop-down boxes on a phone, and then this squashes down. So I'm trying an 8x6. It nearly works.
Have you been using media queries?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I use media queries to detect the minimum and maximum browser size, and then I
Should wrap
drop
around.
my content underneath.
Yep.
I've got a very nice thing that changes the menus. Even in Joomla, I changed the menu module so that if it's on a phone, instead of doing a list menu, it does a drop-down menu. So it kind of works. But it's essentially it's been rather a long job, and I'd be interested to hear if anybody else is having joy with responsive templates and Joomla. I have got one. That site that we just saw is the new template that I've just created.
Have you tried the 1142 grid?
That is including my template uses the 1140 grid. In fact, these are my sources here. So first of all, I started with 1145, which is Seth Warburton's first responsive template for Joomla, and it's based on boilerplate and modernizer, and a bit of construct template framework and a bit of Google fonts and 1140 grid. And then I've just basically been building it up and including other people's bits and pieces as I go, including the all-important prefix free.
And it's not working properly, did you say?
That was close.
Right.
I haven't finished it yet.
At
the
Media,
videos
I think it's called At Media, I've got one.
I've used, well, that's Seth Warburton's as well.
Is it?
I've used a bit of At Media, and I've pushed it a bit further. Yeah.
Right, well that works quite well.
Yeah, it works quite well. I mean, one of the things you will find with this is you've got to write your own template overrides as well, because everything, all the output from anything is not going to be in the correct semantic and responsive code. So you've got to write a fully complete set of template overrides as well. But At Media was good in some respects. But it was a fairly early development piece from Seth, and he needs to abandon it now. It had some flaws.
I'm just using it now. And,
It does work.
yeah, I've got it.
This is certainly one of the better ones out there. But I took one from, can I mention JoomlaDay? No. New theme. And tried to use them, and they basically crashed my site. I couldn't log into the administrator.
I can't even install something.
And I've installed it. So certainly that one at least is reliable. At least it's reliable.
I use Anthony's framework now, but it's I don't think he's done the HTML5. Right. So,
So, well, when I get all this shit to work, because there's so little out there for Joomla, I'm going to just GPL it and let other people reskin it.
certainly the overrides are the key to any. I mean, that's more than half your work. Doing enough with overrides.
Yeah. So basically, that was the upshot of my adventure. And if anybody else is playing the same game, then
Bravo, you.
get in touch. But the conclusion that I've drawn is that unless you're going to make a template yourself, it's a bit early. It's a bit early in the piece.
Is it too early for HTML5, do you think?
Yeah.
Rather than just stick with CSS3? I was going to say...
If you're using Joomla, I think.
Yeah.
Like all the really good sites that I've seen have been handcrafted.
Mm.
I'm writing my own HTML. Not I'm using a CMS. I'm going to do it. The site that I'm working on, go live in the next few months.
I've used the 1145 template.
Yeah.
And I think the main advantage is you can get your desktop view and your phone view done very quickly. The phone view, you just put a little bit of code and you support both things without having to have a big platform. A lot of the third-party template providers, like the main ones you probably all know, have massive platforms, massive frameworks in there to do phone support. And that 1145 one, you just got a small block of CSS. You just say this is the phone and 10 lines of CSS, and you've got it.
Yeah, and those frameworks are going to be the death of those people because they can't make them responsive, I don't think. Oh, this isn't going to work, I've got a password on it. But essentially, I love the fact that this does work on an iPhone without any drama. I mean, you can just move things around and resize your text. Oh, there are the drop-down menus. Okay, they're in development. Don't laugh, they're better again.
And that's just...
That's already going to work, which,
yeah, wow.
90% of my sites don't work on an iPhone. They really just don't work at all.
So that's not a different template, that's responding to the size or the platform?
Both. Yeah, both. So it's dropping the content down, but it's also changing things like the font size and the way that it does the menus and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's moving things around so that you can still see them.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, you've got, like, for example, the daily trading report. It's quite a content-heavy, it's quite a heavy site. When you're looking at designing for it, because, traditionally, and I think a lot of people are still taking the approach with responsive design that you're going from the desktop to the mobile.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was in the UK, and I had the fortune of doing some training stuff with Jeremy Keith, and one thing that he kind of really got across, which was fantastic, which is what we're trying to implement in our processes at the moment, is going from the mobile to the desktop.
Absolutely, mobile first, all the way. Yeah,
and how do you then do it, like for yourself, how have you found, because at the moment I'm kind of stuck with this project that I want to take responsive, but it's a real heavy e-commerce site, it's for industrial products, there's a hell of a lot of content, and the clients basically come to the point where they've said, nah, really we want a mobile specific thing with half of that content ripped out and a little button at the bottom, the old-fashioned way of twisting it. How's your experience?
Well, I like that because what I put into this template is if it's a mobile, don't show this bit of content at all. Show this bit instead.
Yeah.
But I'm lucky because this is an existing site, but we're redeveloping it, so I've kind of got free license on that.
Right.
I've got content to take over. I haven't got this gargantuan existing site that I've got to cram into a mobile, and I am moving forward. For this company, they need it to work on an iPad and iPhone more than anything else. So I don't really have that much legacy shit to face. I'm just saying, well, we're doing it this way. This is the content we'll bring, and that's what we'll just deliver. I won't have 15 depths of menu, I'm just not going there.
I think also from a user experience that makes sense because the user experience from a mobile perspective, they're after different things. They've got a different time span than a desktop experience. And I think building, that's why I asked you that before, I think building almost not building two different templates, but certainly what you're saying, stripping out side bits and
I'm
just
determined
leaving.
not to build 2 templates. I want this to work across platforms.
Yes.
I only want to build one site.
So how are you doing that? I mean, from the perspective of, say, within Joomla, with your menus and things like that, how are you then putting those functions, that coding into the template to actually say, like, detect this, then use this module, use that module? So
I'm never choosing modules, but I am saying, using media queries to say, if this, then display this in a different way.
Yeah.
The code's in the template override mostly. I'm not saying display one thing and then display another thing. I'm just saying display the same thing but display in 2 different ways.
Yeah.
So I'm only changing it really at the CSS level,
So what if you don't
or a
want it?
minimal amount of JavaScript in there as well.
Okay. So what if you don't want particular features like you were saying before? How are you controlling that in your template?
You could just do display none.
Display none, yeah.
Well, a variation on display none, but
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying.
No, it seems to, I'm just, everybody I've been talking to is
Like the
pretty much
menus.
the exact same stuff, yeah.
The menus, it's creating 2 menus. It creates a list menu and it creates a drop-down, but it displays one or the other.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm doing that.
Mm.
And depending, because of accessibility issues, you can't just do display none, you've got to hide it from screen readers as well, but essentially, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Display now will hide it, where?
It depends who you want to see your content, as how you hide it. Really. There's 4 or 5 different ways of hiding it. Yeah. You're doing one, aren't you?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm wrangling with the, I'm kind of wrangling at the moment with the design. As I said, it's an industrial manufacture of industrial products, and there's a lot of information. And when we, were sitting there with the graphic designer, and when they were trying to kind of fit everything into, I mean, the graphic designers just couldn't, and they're very good mobile designers, but they just couldn't find a way to translate what they had designed for them, because they started from desktop first rather than mobile up. Like if we'd have been able to get in to do the mobile up first, I don't think we'd be having such a problem. Whereas now, because they're locked into they've sold that desktop design, so now they're trying to kind of, in a sense, backport that, which is where I find the problems occurring.
I didn't go down that road.
Yeah.
They got a design, and I said, hey kids, that's not going to work. And then luckily
you had to
that's
answer.
explain.
Yeah.
Because it's pointless, A, trying to get it to look the same on all rendering platforms, and B, trying to get the same amount of information on the mobile you can get on the browser. But yeah. Anyway, it's 3:30, so I should shut up. Thank you for listening.
There's a great site that I just found that, well, I've been using border-radius.com for a while to do a little thing, but there's an even better one I just found, CSS3generator.com.
Oh yeah, that was in my presentation actually, but we never got to it, so I rambled on so much.
It's excellent.
It is excellent.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to see what HTML5 can really do, there's a website called chromeexperiments.com, and it's got a few movies. One of them is called Arcade Fire. Make sure you've got a big internet connection before you look at it. But it's staggering. chromeexperiments.com /Arcade Fire. You put in your name, where you grew up, and it makes a movie based on your hometown with your name. So it's just phenomenal. And it's all HTML5. It'll only work in Chrome, by the way.
That's all I've got to remember like that. Thank you.